Okay, everybody, so this is kind of new for us. We're doing a speaker and we're recording it for our YouTube channel, and hopefully it will go up on our website. So I just want to introduce you to Max Weakley. He is our speaker for today. He has been immersed in wildlife since his earliest memories and learned to photograph at the age of 8 from his father, Kent Weakley. And that deepened his passion for wildlife, particularly the feathered variety. He graduated from the University of Central Florida in 2019 after helping to found the UCF Nighthawk Audubon campus chapter. He has a website called maxbirdfacts.com. Check it out. It shares his passion for avifauna and photography with fellow birders around the world. He's a member and the vice president of the Marion Audubon Society. I'm serving on the same board with him. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Max Weakley.
Thank you, Liz. So my name is Max. I've been doing wildlife photography since 2007. That's me, my dad, and brother in Yellowstone. I've got a bachelor's degree in biology from the University of Central Florida, where I helped found the Nighthawk chapter. I run my website, maxbirdfacts.com. Pretty much everything that is in this presentation today is more or less on there through different articles. So if you're interested in learning more about birds through Florida and across the world, please visit my website. And then I'm the vice president of Marion Audubon Society. So before we get into Central Florida specifically, birding is defined as a hobby of watching wild birds in their natural environment. This is, there are regulations on what you can do as far as birding, so you can't go into a zoo and count all the birds that are there in the apiary. So they must be wild, non-captive, and alive to count. This is especially important if you're doing a big year, so you're trying to see as many species as possible within 365-day span. It's as simple as setting up a bird feeder in your backyard, or you can have it as complex as planning out a road trip across the entire country or the state to see as many species as you possibly can. And a lot of people also call it bird watching. Some people get upset about it being called bird watching. It's the same thing. So to get started, you need to have 3 things. First one is curiosity, patience, and an open mind. If you don't have those, it's going to be a hard time trying to wait to see birds. Downloading the Merlin app and getting an eBird account are also extremely helpful. Merlin is free on the App Store or Google Play, depending on if you got iPhone or Android. It is kind of like Shazam for birds. So you hear a bird singing, you can have it record, and it will use AI and save data from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology to identify that bird. You can also use it to identify bird photos. So if you get a picture through your binoculars or you have a camera, you've got a photo, you can upload that photo directly into the Merlin app or take a picture of the back of your photo or your camera, and it will do a usually pretty good job at identifying that bird. And then binoculars also help. Trying to see those little birds, they're called LBBs, little brown birds. Trying to spot those with your naked eye is pretty difficult, so binoculars are a big deal. So you should bird to get a better understanding of our world. Find new and fascinating animals and places. There's a lot of places around the world that I've been to that I wouldn't have seen if I wasn't looking for birds specifically. You connect with a lot of like-minded people like this club. You get a moderate exercise, you get walking, you get some sunshine and some vitamin D. So not excessive, but still nice. And it also does decrease stress. So this is sunrise out at the Orlando wetlands. You get out for sunrise and sunset pretty often. Going out to some different pine savannas as well to find red-cockaded woodpeckers in the national forest. So just some very pretty places that are usually outside of the modern or the typical track that you would go to every day. And then these are a couple of papers that are published in scientific journals talking about the effects of wildlife, nature, and birds on mental health and stress. So eBird is run by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. They use the Clemens 6th edition checklist. So this is essentially just how we label our birds for North America for our common names. It's accessible on a computer and smartphone, and it's the easiest way to maintain your life list and get notifications. So if you're wanting to find certain birds, you can go on here and search for them specifically, or you can set up for Sumter, Marion, whatever county you're in, and get rare bird alerts for ones that are unusual for either that time or the location that you're at. So Florida birds, we have 556 species. There's a wide array of residents, migrants, vagrants, and exotics that live here. Some are extremely site-specific, others are a little bit more widespread. The numbers do also fluctuate during migration. Our residents, we have pretty much all of our herons, egrets, ibis, doves, and game birds, so quails and turkeys, all live here year-round. Most of our woodpeckers, there's one that is a migrant, one that's kind of, it's rare. We have raptors, rails, songbirds, and waterfowl, and then there's several resident subspecies as well. We do have one particular endemic species, so it only occurs within the state of Florida. So our first one, this is the subspecies of the red-shouldered hawk, the Extimus subspecies. So this gray head here is going to be the big indicator for our Florida subspecies versus the more dark, kind of rusty color on the head. You can also see a little bit of the paler chest on our Exodus, our Florida subspecies, versus the more continuous color on the standard Linnaeus subspecies. So this is subspecies is pretty interesting. I really like it. It's a way that you can diversify the number of birds that you see, especially if you're looking for really small details. And when you look for those small details, you typically also find more big details when you're trying to spot them. So pretty common bird for Florida. Red-shouldered hawks are pretty much everywhere. But looking for those subspecies that are pretty rare, you kind of see some different behaviors that you normally wouldn't. Little blue herons, these are my favorite. So you have 3 different color variations that go through the age. So you have the first is all white. This is a juvenile. So the different colors are an indicator to other birds whether or not they're mature. So they're not wasting their time trying to track them. So all white here, and then a immature, or not a adolescent rather, is going to have that piebald color in the center, and then the adult has that really nice continuous blue through the entire body, and then a little bit of almost purplish to the head and neck. And then this is our endemic species. This is the Florida scrub jay. So really, really nice bird. It exists in an ecosystem that is pretty ancient. There's about 100 different species that are only found within this oak scrub habitat, and it covers about 2% of our landmass, and most of that is within Central Florida. So our migratory birds, spring migration is March to May. Then there are buffers on both sides of this, early and late. And then fall migration is August through November. So we're starting to see some of our birds moving out. The swallowtail kites are one of our primary ones that are starting to leave now. Sparrows, warblers, kites, hawks, falcons, gulls, sandpipers, plovers, cranes, hummingbirds, woodpeckers, and many more species are going to be our migratories. So they're hanging out within those seasons. Resident populations swell during migrations. Nesting is rare for migratory seasons as well. This is mainly because you have increased competition for food. So you have those birds that are coming through, they need to fatten back up before they're making their stretch, either heading back north to their breeding grounds or going further south into Central and South America for their wintering. And then many vagrants result during migration as well. So these are birds that are typically not in our area. We'll talk a little bit more about them in a second. Birds that are typically not in our area, but for whatever reason, they do show up in Florida. So first we have our Atlantic flyway. This runs from the Atlantic coast to the Appalachian Mountains. You can see it goes all the way from the Arctic Circle down into these southern portions of South America. And this is, Florida acts as the last stopping point for a lot of these species coming in from the East Coast, going down into Central and South America and vice versa during the opposite side of the season. Mississippi flyway, this is running from the Appalachians to the Great Plains. This is, again, many of these birds are going from doing a straight shot across the Gulf of Mexico into the Yucatan Peninsula. So coming from here and doing a single shot overnight. One of the really incredible species that does that is the ruby-throated hummingbird. They stage in the Gulf Coast of Texas. I can't remember the specific town off the top of my head right now, but they stage off of Texas and they'll make a single shot overnight in one night through the entire Gulf of Mexico into the Yucatan and then continue down into Central and South America. So very, very small bird, weighs about the same as a couple of pennies, can make that flight in one night. And then we can see our overlap here. So what makes Florida very interesting is we can get some of these western or central birds rather. Some of them are western. They start to come down through Florida and they can mix in with that Atlantic flyway as well. So you can have both sides funneling down through Florida, and that gives us some kind of odd species. So some of them are hawks. These are short-tailed hawks. You have a dark and a light morph. So dark morph on the left, light morph on the right. Color morphs are different than subspecies, depending on who you talk to, but they share common traits. So both birds have that pinstriping to the wings, and they have dark trailing edges to the wings and to the tail on both horns. Yellow-bellied sapsucker, that's my favorite woodpecker. They're super cool. So they are our winter migratory woodpecker. Their name is perfect because it is both a physical feature and their behavior. So they have a yellow belly. Woodpeckers kind of sit close onto trees. So red-bellied woodpeckers, kind of a frustrating name because their belly is red, but you very rarely see it. But they do have a yellow belly, yellowish, and then they are sapsuckers. So they'll intentionally peck and bleed trees to drink the sap, kind of like how a hummingbird drinks nectar for the sugar. Hooded warblers, we get a lot of warblers during migration. Some stay, some move through, but hoodeds are one of my favorite. So male, so they've got that iconic, really dark black hood that contrasts the yellow. The females have the same hood. It's a little bit paler, and then the yellow is also much more muted than the male. So our exotics, these are from neotropic and tropical environments primarily. They are mostly from pet trades and zoos, and they're highly aggressive and compete with native species, and they have really quick reproductive rates and low levels of natural predators. And that's how they can get very established very quickly. And once they are established, they can kind of take over an ecosystem. Sometimes they are beneficial to other species. So different parrots, they are extremely endangered in their natural habitats, but for whatever reason, they do very well here in North America. So the red-crowned parrot's a good example. They're critically endangered in Mexico, but they are decently established in Florida, Texas, and a couple other places. So it's good to have some of that where they're not outcompeting our native species, but there are definitely ones like the Muscovy duck. They're good birds. They're not bad. They were domesticated by pre-Columbian societies in Central and South America. And the idea is that they were imported to the Old World by the Muscovy company. That's how they got their name. But they are pretty aggressive against our native ducks. So this was in Tuscarora Park in Ocala. They will interbreed with mallards and with some other ones, but they'll typically push out native species out of their natural habitat and then reduce their ability to survive. So they don't look horrible, but they are not native to here, unfortunately. Gray-headed swamp hens are another one. These escaped kind of in between Fort Lauderdale and Miami and South Florida in the 90s, and they have become really well established since then. So these compete directly with our purple gallinules. Purple gallinules are a southeastern specialty, so they hang out in the southeast, Florida and Louisiana mainly, and then down into Central and South America. But they are slightly larger. They are a little bit more aggressive, so they're able to push purple gallinules out of where they normally would nest, and that's how they're able to establish their new territory. Monk parakeets are another one. So they make these colonial stick nests. They're cool birds. We in Florida and throughout the North America, we had Carolina parakeets for a long time until we shot them all to death. So they have a semi-empty niche. So a lot of parrots do very well here for that reason. Monk parakeets are one of them. So they're very social. They're very able to adapt to our environment that we have. Is very similar to where they live in South America. And they make these colonial nests that can survive winters, and they're even established in Madrid and New York and Chicago, and they can go through blizzards without freezing to death. So, your best shot here is going out to, Pinellas County to see them, but there is a group in Orlando, going on eBird and searching on there for them, you'll see very consistent hotspots. Those are nest sites. So once they have a nest site set up, they're very easy to spot. You just have to find the nest. It's this big clump of sticks that's in the top of usually a power line or a utility tower. And just wait 10 minutes and you'll hear them and then you'll see them. They are body size about that big, and then add another length for the tail. So pretty small. They're like, you're a little bit bigger than like a budgery. So still a small bird, but very brightly colored. They got blue on the primaries, which is pretty nice to see in flight. You're welcome. So our vagrants, these are very rare visitors to our state. Some of them very rare, some not so much. They arrive here via natural means, so not through humans moving them over. And they sometimes stay for extended periods, but they usually will leave as soon as they possibly can. They're not here by their own volition, so they want to go back into their normal zones quickly. Normally they're blown into Florida, at least by storms from the Atlantic and Pacific. So as they're moving down from the Texas to the Yucatan and the Gulf, if there's a storm that's moving across, they're going to try and outrun the storm, and they're going to land at the first place of land that they see, whether that's Louisiana or Florida, or into Texas. So sometimes we get some of those Western birds that show up here in Florida, which are really nice. And the frequency seems to be increasing. I personally think it's mainly because of more birders, more people going out and finding stuff, especially the increased access to good quality cameras. We're able to take photos of things and realize that they're not what we originally thought they were. But there is definitely changes in weather patterns, changes in the climate that are going to be affecting that as well. So our piratic flycatcher here, this is the second time this bird was ever sighted in Florida. This was in Fort DeSoto in April of this year. It is a Central and South American bird, and it migrates into southern Mexico during its breeding season. So this is most likely, we'll never really know where these birds actually come from. Most likely this bird was moving up to its breeding grounds in Mexico, got caught up in a storm and blown all the way across the Gulf into Fort DeSoto. So great bird. There's before this was seen, there's about 20 reportings of it in Florida. Now there's 250 something. So over 200 people went to go and find this. A couple of weeks after I got this photo, it was spotted in the Keys for a couple days and then gone. So most likely just ran down the coast into the Keys, got a little jump over into the Caribbean, back into Mexico. Magnificent frigate birds. These aren't necessarily rare for Florida as a whole, but for Central Florida specifically, they are. So not the best photo in the world for sure, but this is in Lake County. This is Lake Eustis. And I don't want to say this is the first. I'm going to say it's the second. I'm not 100% sure if I was the first to find it or not, but for Lake County, these are extremely rare. These are shorebirds. These are seabirds, so they hang out by the coast. Very large birds. They're about the size, say, of a swallowtail kite. Very similar in appearance in the flight as well. They've got that really deeply forked tail, but they're pure black for adult males. And what happens usually is this is Hurricane Ian. So as the hurricane rolls through, they're either going to try and outrun it, or they'll get sucked into it and hang out in the eye. The thought process is, as the birds are flying over water than over land, the second they see a spot where they can drop down, they will, and then they'll wait out the storm, take up, and then leave. So in the same sighting, we have bridal terns, sooty terns, black terns, sandwich Caspians, a ton of different seabirds that were showing up in a large lake in Central Florida. So seems to, the theory holds water, but again, there's not enough studies to show and prove that that's the case. And we have the Pacific golden plover. This was here in the Villages. This was last year. Very rare bird, very good bird. So the way that you can distinguish this from an American golden is that white under the wing pit, for better or lack of a better word. So it was continuous from the eye to the tail. The American would get cut off by black. So very nice species. sometimes it is worth going for a short drive to try and find a nice bird. So how do you find birds? You've got to learn the species first before anything else. So if you're going to an area where it's not typically going to be, you're going to have a hard time. If you're not knowing the behaviors of that species, you're going to have a difficult time finding as well. Listening for calls, birds are very vocal for the most part. If you're listening for different audio cues, listening for woodpeckers pecking and cutting on wood or drumming even, or songs or little chip calls and begging from juveniles, that's a really good way to find them. Look for signs. You have that woodpecker hole here for that northern flicker. You can see for discarded shell casings on the ground. You can look for droppings that could indicate that there's a nest site. All kinds of different things that you can look for. Just be aware of your environment. Stand still as well. When you enter a room, sometimes it goes really quiet, and then everything lifts back up after that. It's the same thing with birds. They're not sure if you're there to eat them or not. So they're going to wait and kind of feel out the room before they go back to doing their normal stuff. So just give it a minute, and then sometimes you'll have everything start moving around, and you do have to get outside. If you're not outside, you're not gonna find birds. So where do they hang out? It's very specific to the lifestyle. So with that scrub jay, where its habitat only exists on 2% of our landmass, it's gonna be difficult to find it on that 98% of the rest of the landmass. So if you're not going to where that bird is or where it likes to exist, you're gonna have a hard time finding it. Some are more common in different locations than others. Again, going back to the scrub jay, if you say you're in the national forest as a whole, they exist in the national forest, but in small pockets of the forest. So if you're looking for scrub jays and you're not in that pocket, you're going to have a hard time finding it. You might find other good species, but you're not going to find your target species. And look for water and food sources. If you find something that the birds are really like hummingbirds, for example, they like flowers with long tubes or trumpets rather. So they will have, at least our ruby throats, have a pretty consistent routes that they like to go once they figure out a good food source. So 15-20 minutes, you should see that hummingbird back at your feeder or back at that flower. You want it, just wait it out, it'll come back. And then look for those signs of activity. Look for trees and cavity nests, look for those droppings. That's a good way to see where they are. And you can also stalk eBird. I found a lot of good species by stalking eBird lists. Sometimes people will be really nice for coordinates for certain species. So if you see that and you do look for one, you can pass that information on as well, so that other people that are looking for it can get that information. So now we're going to go into kind of my top 10 Central Florida hotspots. This is starting at Paynes Prairie Preserve, the Ocala Wetlands, the Ocala National Forest, Silver Springs, Emeralda Marsh, Lake Apopka, Orlando Wetlands, Joe Overstreet, Merritt Island, and Fort DeSoto. These aren't the only ones that you can go to. These are ones that I spent a lot of time at, so I'm very familiar with their locations and species. But we're obviously moving kind of north to south, so Alachua County to Osceola County, and then we're going east to west with Merritt Island to Fort DeSoto. So starting in Paynes Prairie, this is again in Alachua County. There are 276 species here. The species numbers are all through eBird. We have Lachua Trail, the observation deck on 441, Cones Dyke Trail, and Bolden Bluff. These are very important winter grounds for sandhill cranes, very well established Florida snailkite territory. There are bison here, so it's kind of cool for Florida. They're introduced in 1975. They went extinct here in the 1890s. So it's nice to see them back. And it's also a great area for alligators, cracker horses, and white-tailed deer if you want to see other than just birds. So this is a wintering ground for sandhill cranes. You can see those bison off in the corner there. But yeah, all those gray specks, those are all sandhill cranes. So sandhill cranes lack it's called the hallux, the rear toe. So if you put your hand into, well, it's hard to do with my left hand. If you do it kind of a status like this, the hind toe would be your thumb. The sandhill cranes, because they spend so much time on the ground, it became vestigial, to say at best. And so they can't grab onto perch or even to food like a raptor or even a songbird can. So if they were to try and land on a tree branch and fall asleep, they just fall off the tree. So they have to have very open ground to be able to see any kind of predators that are starting to walk towards them because they sleep on the ground. If there's high vegetation or if there's any kind of additional terrain for hills, they're going to completely abandon it. And then also if there's some very shallow water, they like that because then they can hear stuff. So you can onto them as well as see it. But very good spot for sandhill cranes. Whooping cranes are another excellent species here. So with that movement of large groups of sandhill cranes, there was a project that was done kind of early on with whooping cranes to try and get them reestablished in territories by putting a couple of them with different groups of sandhills. It never really worked out. But this one here is banded and radio tagged. So they will occasionally be moving with these massive groups of sandhills. They are significantly larger. They're pure white in their adult form at least. And then the red on the face as well extends down to the kind of chin area of the bird. So really, really good species to find. They're critically endangered. If you do find a bird, especially a bird like this that's banded, there are different programs that study these birds. On my website, I have a page that I've been compiling as many of those in one area as I can because it's very frustrating to try and search for them sometimes. So if you find it, go to that study site, report your finding. If you have photos, put the photos in, and that way you can give information to researchers on where the birds are moving around to, if they're staying in one area, if they're moving with migration, whatever it is. Snail kites. These are a Florida, what's the best way to put this? It's a Florida residential endangered species. So there is a population that stays in Florida year round. There are migrations that move through Florida, but our snail kites are locally endangered. So this is a male. They are very nice, kind of consistent gray with that white on the base of the rump and then the orange on the beak and feet. These are another species that's kind of being helped by invasives. So we have a lot of different apple snails that are moving through Florida. And they're much bigger and more adaptive than our native apple snails. So because of that, snail kites are starting to move with the new movements of apple snails. So snail kites are typically a South Florida bird. The new apple snails that are coming in are moving further north. They also have a larger shell. There's been studies that WC has done that have measured the length of the upper bill to show that they're adapting to these larger snails. So they're able to reach around that snail shell and consume these invasive species. So not great for our native waterways, but it does help a locally endangered bird. And then we got the cracker horses with the little cattle grip. So these are cool. They're Spanish horses. They're dropped off in the 1500s, 1600s, and they're used by the original settlers of Florida and the Seminoles. And they're just, there's a couple of herds that are out in Paynes Prairie. So it's fun to see wild horses. The Ocala wetlands is in Marion County. There's 179 species there. It functions to clean stormwater before it enters our aquifers. And it's got 2.5 miles of really nice paved trails, and it's 3 miles from downtown Ocala, so not in the middle of nowhere, which is great. And there are some weird oddities that show up, and part of that is because there's a lot of really good habitat that is in this area. It's also a good place to find the Sherman's fox squirrel, which is another Central Florida animal. The red-headed woodpeckers, these actually have red heads instead of our red bellies that have a red crown. But red-headed woodpeckers are pretty well established there. There were more numbers before there was a development off to one side of the property, but they are still there. Really nice bird, especially easy to find it outside of having to go into the national forest, which that can be sketchy sometimes. Blue grosbeaks are pretty good here too. This is an immature male. You can see that blue on the face and starting to show up in the shoulders, but mostly kind of brown through the rest of the body. But these are great. They like to perch in kind of high openings like this one is and belt out a couple of songs. Other than here, they can be kind of spotty to find, but good area to view them. And then Cape May warblers, these are another migratory species. This is a male. We got the orange on the cheeks and the nice contrasting black and yellow on the chest. These will sit at the very tops of the trees, and they're pretty much just picking off whatever they can, moving on, picking off whatever they can, moving on. So they're just using our state as essentially a highway to get back into their breeding sites. But a lot of these birds will get it's called warbler neck, where you're standing and sitting, looking up in the binoculars straight up into a tree for 10 minutes at a time. You look down and your neck's all strained. And vermilion flycatcher, this is kind of our mascot at the wetlands. So this is a female, so not very red, but she's got a little kind of salmon on the vent, but that's soft gray on the rest of the body. So she's about the size of Eastern phoebe, but this is a Western bird. So they hang out in Oklahoma and Texas. So most likely got caught up in one of those storms going down south. And for whatever reason, she decided to stay over winter with us. And then the next year she came back. So she saw that she had a great opportunity in this area. She didn't have to compete with other vermilion flycatchers. This is my assumption, by the way. I can't read bird's mind. But she didn't have to compete with other animals for that food. So she had an easy food source there with all the water for all the insects that we have in Florida. So decided to come back, and we'll see if she comes back again this year. And then that's the Sherman's fox squirrel. These are, if you haven't seen a fox squirrel, it's worth trying to find one. They're really weird. Normal squirrels are kind of compact. They look like rats, but this is like really lanky. And then they've got this black mask for the ones that we have. But yeah, they're very odd animals. But again, the Ocala wetlands is a good spot to find them. The Ocala National Forest, this is in both Marion and Lake counties, around about 200 species, depending on where you're at. Clearwater Lake Restoration Area, Hopkins Prairie, Sunset Trail, Alexander Springs, and Forest Road 88. This is primarily oak hammock and pine savannas, but you do have some of that oak scrub in the National Forest. The extensive area that covers a lot of north central Florida, and you kind of have to treat it like going out into the ocean. There are going to be pockets of wildlife. There's obviously wildlife everywhere, but to be able to find some of the species that you really want, you have to treat it like an island. So one of our first ones is the common nighthawk. These guys are on their way out now as well. So they are they're called nightjars. Very cool bird. They're related to swifts, and they're also cousins to hummingbirds, which is pretty interesting. But they are a full aerial insectivores. So they will fly and catch insects on the wing. They have this behavior that they do where they fly as high up into the sky as they can, drop like a stone, and the last second they go and invert their wings to try and break and act as an air brake. And the sound of the wind passing over the wings makes a buzz call. Very cool to watch, very cool to hear. And they think there's not enough research that's done on it yet, but they think that it's done to impress females, like driving your car really fast. So brown-headed nuthatch is another one. So this is really the only nuthatch we have in Florida. Sometimes we'll get white-breasted nuthatches in North Florida, but Central not really. So they have an oddish behavior for a lot of songbirds where they cling to trees like woodpeckers do. There's a couple of warblers that do that, black and white warblers one, but they are very interesting little birds. They have a squeaky toy kind of call, but they'll wedge nuts into the bark of the trees and then use their bill to hammer it open. So that's why they got their name. Scrub jay, so this one has its favorite food, the acorn. So it's interesting behavior with the scrub jays is they can remember where they stashed food and what food was stashed in that location. So if they stash, say, a couple of insect larvae, acorns, and then sunflower seeds that they stole from someone's backyard, they'll know which one's going to go bad first, and they can go to that one before it goes bad and then save the other ones until they have to. And acorns specifically are very important for them as part of that oak scrub habitat, because oak in general does called masting, where certain years they produce a lot of seeds, acorns, other years they don't produce that many. So it's a way to help mitigate against predation. So the importance of knowing where those stashes are for long periods of time is very key to the survival of the scrub jays, where if they don't remember where their stash is during those off seasons during masting, they could starve. But since they know where it is, they do very well. And red-cockaded woodpeckers, this is another one, it's a regional endangered species, so pretty common in East Texas and Alabama. But they have, you can't see it in the photo, they're very hard to see, but the cockade is right behind the eye, just around here. It's a single feather that's red. A lot of these names come from taxonomists that have the bird skins in their hand and they're able to do all the measurements to identify its actual species. Once they do, they find a distinctive feature or the person that it was discovered by, and they name it after that. So the red cockade, normally we can't see it, but a taxidermist definitely can. And then hairy woodpeckers is pretty rare. They are more of a northern species. We get them in winter every now and then, but they have a beak. The easy way to distinguish them from a downy, the beak is about the same length as the head. Downies are much shorter. They're slightly bigger as well than the downy woodpeckers. Silver Spring State Park, this is in Marion County. We have 162 species. There is the main hotspots are the Silver River, Wayside Park, and the Head Spring. The main feature of this is an extremely pristine freshwater ecosystem, and it's a vital nesting area for a lot of different herons, egrets, cormorants, and anhingas. And we have cypress swamps, oak hammocks, upland scrub, and pine savannas here. And for a lot of people that are coming to Florida, it was the first tourist attraction to Central Florida before Disney was. But it's an important area for seeking the original Florida. What a lot of people would assume the conquistadors or the Spaniards would come and see it in the 16th century. So wood ducks, great bird, really easy to find them on the river. I was talking to some people at the Silver River Museum last week, and they said that they had a lot of hatchlings this year. So good population for them, really good environment. And then we have the male there kind of centered, and then the female is off on the right. Male is usually more colorful. That's called sexual dimorphism, where there's a clear distinction between male and female. Sometimes that's by size, sometimes that's by coloration like this, but usually you'll have some form of way to distinguish between them. Swallowtail kites, beautiful bird. They're very nice raptors. They primarily get their food by, it's called gleaning, where they're picking it off from the tops of the trees. So any kind of lizard, frog, cricket, anything like that they can get from the top of the trees, along with dragonflies. They love dragonflies. But if you ever want to see them, go to a cow pasture that's been freshly mowed. All the grasshoppers have nowhere to hide anymore, and you'll see swallowtail and Mississippi kites dropping down on them. But these guys are going to be heading out within a week or so back to Central and South America. So they're going to be flying down Florida, jumping to Cuba, and then jumping down through the different island chains into Central America and shooting down into the south. So they are on their way out, but they're a good indicator for the start and stop of migration. So they are the first ones in, first ones out. These are anhingas, pretty cool. I was recently on a trip to Costa Rica, and there was a lot of people there that hadn't seen anhingas before, which is kind of weird. Growing up in Florida, they're very common here. But we have the male on the left and the female on the right. Males are pure black, and females have that kind of soft brown head, and they both have that very light teal around their eyes. And this is on a nest, and they do different breeding behaviors. But this one actually ended up stabbing the male through the gular, the little like throat pouch. So it's not a good time. Yeah. Yellow crowned night herons. This is odd to have in Central Florida, excluding going coastal. So these like to hang out in mangroves primarily. So they like that brackish water. But for whatever reason, there's a really well-established population in the Silver River. So we have black crowned night herons all over the place throughout Florida, but the yellow crowns, they have that yellow on the cheek, yellow on the crown, hence the name. And then they have that kind of orangish eye, really big eye. It shows that they are crepuscular birds and nocturnal birds. So crepuscular is that dawn and dusk period just before and after the sun's up. But they are also nocturnal, so they can have a much wider pupil to see their prey. Prothonotary warblers, these are not restricted strictly to the Silver River, but they are a really good spot there. The males, I think both actually, are this bright yellow with the kind of blue-gray on the wings. but they are secondary cavity nesters that like to have very shallow woodland swamps. So weirder than other warblers, they nest in abandoned tree cavities that woodpeckers make. It helps with predation, but it's just a slightly odder warbler than some of our other ones. And we've got those rhesus macaques that came in from, I think it was Tarzan Island or Monkey Island. They didn't research that they were semi-aquatic monkeys, so when they released them, they just swam off. So Emerald Marsh Conservation Area, this is in Lake County. There are 214 species here, and the hotspots are the Wildlife Drive, Boat Ramp, and Bull Hammock. It's an extensive freshwater marsh, wetland, cypress swamp, and oak hammock. It is a critical wintering ground for waterfowl. You can find a lot of different rare ducks in this area too. So I live about 20-ish minutes from here, so try and see it as much as I can during the winter to find canvas bags and ruddy duck. And there's also resident pair snail kites in this area too. So another well-established zone for these locally endangered species. So these are redheads. They're not necessarily rare, but they're definitely an infrequent species for us. The male is there up on the top, female's on the bottom. But you have that kind of bluish gray beak is consistent, definitely brighter on the male. That's just another one of those sexual dimorphisms. But they both terminate at the tip with that black. So it's a good indicator for the females. Female ducks are very frustrating, especially when you first start off birding. But beak coloration is a really good one to keep in mind. Snail kite. This is a juvenile. So the younger birds have this buff color just above the eye. But this is one of those invasive apple snails. So apple snails, our native ones, are pretty small. The invasives are massive. I've picked up a bunch of the shells from Emeralda and from some other areas from snail kites and limpkins. Limpkins are another local bird. They are super cool and they eat apple snails. But this is just another sign of a good healthy population where we have young birds showing up consistently. Forster's terns. Kind of my association with terns is usually the coast, but we do have a lot that hang out in Central Florida, specifically Forsters. These are not infrequent when we find them, but it's super fun to watch them. They do this interesting kind of fly until they find something, hover above it, and it gives us a nice opportunity for photos, and then they'll shoot down into the water to get it. So pretty fun one just to observe every now and then, even though it's not very rare. And this is that purple gallinule, so one that competes with our invasive species, the gray-headed swamp hen. So purple gallinules have this kind of candy corn color to the beak, and then that blue crown on the top of the head is a really good way to indicate them if you don't have a clean look at the body compared to the common gallinule, which is consistently red from the kind of mouth part to the top of the head. But they have a nice blue purple color and the head that goes kind of more blue green further down the body. And eastern wood peewees, these are really cool small flycatchers. They hang out in the kind of swampish areas, not super swampy, but it's a really good spot to find them, especially during migration. They usually will just move through the state. Sometimes we'll have one like this guy where they hang out for a little longer than normal, but really good area for them. And Lake Apopka, this is in Lake and Orange counties. We have 346 species here, so very high. Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive is the main hotspot for here. We also have the McDonald Canal Boat Ramp, Clay Island Loop, and Newton Park. It's the 4th largest lake in Florida. And that large expanse attracts a lot of waterfowl. So you can find just about any duck in Florida during winter at Lake Apopka. And the marsh flowway was established in 2003 to help reduce the phosphorus from the water due to the agricultural work that's done around the lake. So fulvous whistling ducks, these are a pretty widespread group of ducks that hang out in South America all the way to Africa. They are pretty rare through Florida though. There's starting to be a little bit more movement northward through Florida with these birds, but one of the only places that you're going to consistently find them is Lake Apopka. So if you're looking for this bird, say you're doing a big year for Florida, you're trying to do that, definitely have to hit this because it's essentially a gimme. Least bitterns, these can be extremely frustrating birds to find for photography. They like to hang out pretty deep in brush. They are very shy, and they will fly as soon as you see them. I got very lucky with this one, but this is a male. They have a black head and black on the back. But after this, I've been back during the breeding season, so late May, early June, and I've seen at least a dozen at the time. So it's a very healthy breeding population of these birds. When they're breeding, the adults have to move from the nest into the open to hunt more often, so you have more chances to see them. So during that period, it's a little warm for Florida, but it is very good to find them and actually be able to photograph them. Sometimes you can also see the nestlings after the adult flies into a stand of cattails. And that's a great blue heron, very common bird for Florida, but not too common to see them eating marsh rabbit. So it's a good reminder that we're living among dinosaurs still, and this is still their world. Peregrine falcons. So with that movement of waterfowl, you're going to have predators following them. And the apex predator against ducks is the peregrine. So one of the most widespread raptors in the world, an apex predator. It is specialized in hunting other birds. It's not really the nicest thing in the world, but everything has to eat. They just eat different things. So this is an adult. You have that black mask, kind of charcoal body, and really fine pinstriping on the chest. So again, that black mask, charcoal body, and pinstriping. So beautiful bird. Fly up into altitude until they spot their prey. They will go into a dive bomb and they'll hit about 180 to 200 miles an hour. Sucker punch their prey with a closed talon. Sometimes it's enough to kill it. Other times it's just enough to stun it. Lands on the ground. The falcon will come over to it. It has, it's called a talonal tooth. It's a projection just after the main curve of the upper bill. And what it does, it acts as a guillotine to help snap the spine on the neck of their prey. So very efficient, very brutal, but that's just how it works. Yellow warblers. So these are another migratory bird. They are super cool. I like them a lot. The male here has that orange striping on the chest. Females will have a little bit of striping, but not very obvious. But they are primarily all yellow with that black eye. And then they hang out in the willow stands in Lake Apopka very often. And they, for whatever reason, like to hang out with northern water thrushes. Northern water thrushes are very hard to spot. They're very consistent calls, but another really good bird. So next we have the Orlando Wetlands Park. This is in Orange County. There are 253 species here. Wasteland water reclamation system for the Orange Seminole counties, very similar to the Ocala wetlands. It is 35 million gallons are set through here daily. It takes 40 days for that water to process through. 1,200 acres of pristine wetland ecosystem, and it's extremely active rookeries during the nesting season. So we have black-bellied whistling ducks are extremely common here. This is a nice Florida bird. They are very fun to watch in the air. They will mess with each other all the time. But they have the black belly. You can see on this bottom one where you have that kind of chestnut color going into the black, and they have a very broad tricolor on the wing with that chestnut, white, and black. Barred owls, these are, they're pretty well spread across North America, but they like wetlands. Their favorite food is frogs. So they like hanging out in areas where frogs breed, so then when they're appropriate, they can find them and eat them. But they'll also eat small birds, reptiles, amphibians, mammals, anything they can get their hands on or their talons around, they'll eat. But really cool, soft gray on the face, and then that kind of mottled gray brown on the body. Sandhill cranes is another one that we actually have a residential subspecies of. So the Pradiensis group is ours, and this is proof of it. The breeding sandhill cranes in Florida are all Pradiensis. So the ones that leave here are the typical eastern migratory groups. They're slightly larger. There's a few obvious differences, not obvious, field markers that you can use. They're very difficult to distinguish if they're separate, but together they're kind of easy. But if you see a young sandhill crane right now, which there's still a couple, not this small, that is a Pradiensis. American bitterns, these are worse than the least bitterns as far as trying to see. What is nice is that they will, if you find one, lands into an area, you have a chance to see it. Just watch where it's going to go. You can watch the cattails and the rushes move. And if you track where it's heading to, like what I hear, you can set yourself up for an opening where you're going to project that it might go into. So if you're trying to get a photo of them, you don't get lucky with actually seeing one as it's flying and you only catch it right when it drops. Just give it a minute and you can watch them, but they like to tend to stay very low to the ground and kind of snake their way through the cattails. So pretty tricky bird. And then painted buntings, these are classified as sensitive species for Florida, so they come down here during the winter. But this is a male, they have that beautiful blue head, that yellow on the chest, and that red through the rest of the body. Very nice, pretty bird. And the females are kind of a blue-green color, very consistent through the body. Joe Overstreet Landing is in Osceola County. There's 230 species here. It's on the north edge of the Kissimmee Prairie and surrounded by sod and cattle farms. It's on the southern edge of central Florida, and it's very active during heavy rain. So with those sod farms and with the cattle fields, you'll have a lot of insect life. And as it rains, that starts to come more to the surface, especially for species that are underground, like earthworms. They will come further to the surface, and then you'll have a lot of different probing species are going to be more active because of that. And there's also another spot for resident snail kites. As you can tell, I like our resident species. So we have, this is a female with that white above the eye compared to the one from Emeralda that was more brown. Very good bird. They hang out where there's enough space for the snail or the apple snails to nest on, where the apple snails will be in pretty shallow water, just a couple of inches deep. They'll lay their eggs as they're climbing up the stalks of the grass to lay their eggs. That's when the snail kites will typically find them. But they'll do what's called kiting, where as they're flying around, they can kind of hold position in one spot and look like they're almost hovering. That's typically what's called kiting. Not kites aren't the only group of birds. Several hawks and harriers can do that as well, but it is the group that's named after. Crested caracaras. These are a very rare bird anywhere where we are right now. Further south, they're pretty common. It's another local bird that we have. There's a group that's been here since the Ice Age for the caracaras, separated from the but these are falcons. They're not vultures or hawks, which is pretty interesting to see that difference in body style and feeding behavior. They are typically carrion feeders, but they're very opportunistic. Bobwhites, super cool little quail. It's our only native quail to Florida. We do have some that are invasive, but and they can be very skittish because we hunt them. They don't like to hang out with people, but they are super cool. Usually you'll see them in the fields, but sometimes they'll perch up on the fence posts. Upland sandpipers, during migration, it's a very typical holdover point for the upland sandpipers. So if you're looking for these, they are really nice. They have lack of a better term for it, is bowling pin style body. So they've got a very small head, thin neck, and then pretty broad body. But it's a really good way to remember the shape compared to other sandpipers and plovers that can come through Florida. Loggerhead shrikes, very interesting bird, my personal favorite bird. They have a beak that is very reminiscent of a peregrine falcon because they are extremely predatory. They will sing in ways to mimic other birds to draw them in, capture the bird, break its neck with the terminal tooth, just like the peregrine has, and then stick it onto barbed wire and pull it apart. So that's where they got their names called the butcher bird, like a butcher's hook. Very brutal, very not nice, but it's extremely efficient, especially for trying to eat larger prey. So birds don't have teeth, they can't chew, they can't slice prey off of or meat off of the bone or something like that. So they can catch, and they're very strong for their size. They can catch animals that they normally couldn't swallow in one go and be able to pick it apart and also leave it to essentially turn into almost like jerky. So you can have some cricket jerky next to some lizards and a little mouse. So Merritt Island, this is on the east coast in Brevard County. There are 317 species. Main point of interest here is Blackmore Wildlife Drive, but there's also that Scrubber's Trail Pump House Road, Maxburg Causeway is a pristine brackish mangrove and intercoastal ecosystems. Very important waterfowl wintering ground. And there are also pockets of that ancient oak scrub habitat that is here. So one of that species of waterfowl is the northern shoveler. This is a male or a drake, as a lot of the male ducks are called. It's got that green head, very reminiscent of a mallard. They are not related to mallards, but they can interbreed with them. But the beak on these ducks is very interesting because they have projections of keratin from the upper mandible that act essentially like baleen from whales. So they can go through an area and filter feed extremely efficiently for small plankton and microorganisms that a lot of other animals can't use. American avocets, it's another really good coastal bird. They're not super common, but they do form pretty large groups. What's kind of interesting, if you want to start learning different names of species of scientific binomials, recurve rostridae, the genus name here. Recurve means an upward curve, and rostrum is the beak. So you have that upward curve to the beak is how the group of birds got their name. And Americana, obviously, it's the American of these animals. There are several across the world. Black skimmers, these are related to gulls and terns in the similar group, but they've got this really long lower mandible. And what it does is they fly low to the water, just above the surface of the water, with that lower bill dropped, and they skim it, how they got their name, through the water. As soon as it feels anything touch it, it snaps it up and tries to swallow whatever that prey item is. So very cool, interesting bird. Really cool to watch them do that feeding behavior. Rosette spoonbills, beautiful bird. It's really our only, flamingos are kind of native, but mostly it's like the Everglades, but pink bird. So they've got this really nice spoon-shaped bill, and they eat small prey items like this, some kind of either algae or some invertebrate, but they have their mouth open and they'll scan back and forth until they can feel something with the extra sensors they have from that spoon-shaped bill. As soon as they feel that movement or whatever the disturbance is, they can snap it up. And then we got that scrub jay. So this is a juvenile bird. It's a little hard to see with the harsh contrast in light, but that's a cicada that it's eating. So young guy doesn't quite know how to save up yet, so he's just eating his food when he's hungry. But really cool to see them, especially these young ones. They're very curious, and so they won't run away from you as much as say like a blue jay will. And then also, since they're protected, we have never, oh, I shouldn't say never, but currently we don't harm them, so they've got no reason to fear humans. And we have cinnamon teal. This is another midwestern bird where they're pretty common in Oklahoma, Nebraska, Texas. And every now and then we'll get one that comes in during migration. Thought process is that they'll hang out with blue-winged teals, which are very common for us to have. And one of those groups will move to Florida instead of down into Mexico, and they come to Florida with them. So these will typically hang out in large groups of blue-winged teal. And this one's a male with that nice cinnamon color in the body, and then that red eye. The females also have the red eye, so that's a good indicator for them. But you can have pretty consistent interbreeding between blue-winged teal and cinnamon teal, so there's cousins. And last one we have is Fort DeSoto Park in Pinellas County. 351 species here, and it's the furthest west point in peninsular Florida. You have open beach palm and pine hammocks and that brackish mangrove as a nesting area for many shorebirds. And it's usually that first stop for birds flying east across the Gulf of Mexico, like that piratic flycatcher that we had at the beginning. And it's very common for rare and unusual species to be here. And during migration, species that would be considered extremely rare here are more or less common in Fort DeSoto. So one of our first ones is the shorebird. We have an American oyster catcher. There is a pair of residents that have lived here for a few years. One of them is the female here, is called AE. She's banded with a little kind of red-orange band. The numbers on it are AE, since the name. They just had another successful clutch of chicks. So if you want to see some oyster catcher kind of scraggly adolescent ones at this point, you can go over there and find them. But very consistent to find them. Really cool bird. nice for Florida, and we have the snowy plover. Most of the time, these will leave our state after migration. We do have some that stay throughout the entire year though. So for whatever reason, they decide they don't want to continue with their migrations. They'll hang out in Florida. And some of them, like this one, are banded. So again, just like that whooping crane, if you find a banded bird, try and report it. It's very important for different scientists for their research. A lot of them will ask you what colors you saw because that's how they're identifying the birds. They'll be broken down by upper and lower leg and then left and right. So for example, this one, we have the right leg here. It's hard to see in the photo, but there is an aluminum federal band. So there's one here on the upper right, orange, lower right, upper left, none, lower left, yellow over orange. So that way you can give them the information. They can look through the records, figure out which bird it is, and then they can submit the data to see where it is, if it's going through migration, if it's not, whatever their project is. Reddish egret's another coastal bird, very cool. They got a super interesting hunting behavior where they run around and kind of looks like they're just chasing something, using their wings to balance until they finally catch a fish. So it's really fun to watch. But they've got this kind of loose mane feathers for their breeding plumage. You have two color morphs. This is a dark morph here. Light morph is all white through the body, but has that pink and then black on the beak. So the beak color stays the same, kind of like the blue, little blue heron, where you have that white color variant when it's a juvenile, but the beak is different from the other ones. The white through the body, and then the beak is that identifier. Merlins, these are the smaller cousin to the peregrine that we have in North America. This one has a catbird that it caught. So just like the songbirds that are coming over and going to berry bushes and stuff, the raptors also have to eat, get their fuel so they can continue on their journey. So unfortunately, this one caught a catbird, but there were a lot of catbirds that day, so it was probably okay. Worm-eating warblers, these are pretty hard to see specifically, but again, because of that movement over the water, everything is essentially in starvation mode right now. So they're trying to feed. They're not too worried about staying hidden. So you can see some of these pretty odd species at Fort DeSoto during the migration. And rose-breasted grosbeak is very common summer bird for the East Coast and kind of the Midwest, but for Florida, very rare, especially seeing male and full breeding plumage. But again, Fort DeSoto during breeding season, you'll see these breeding plumage birds. Not commonly, but pretty consistently. So can you only bird at a hotspot? No. Bird everywhere. You can bird here. You can go on the walk. If it's not a hotspot, it doesn't matter. It does help with those numbers for eBird and Cornell. Sign up for eBird rare bird alerts. You can do it for the whole state. You can do it just for the county. It's very easy to do for the different areas, and that way you can see when something unusual pops up. You can also talk to other birders. You've got a whole birding club here. You've got people that probably know where a species that you want to find is. So if you're looking for something, just ask. Most people are pretty open about talking about it. We're all pretty interested in this stuff. And then you can also drive around, get lost. Like don't get too lost, but drive around and find different areas. You might find that there's a pond here that happens to have something unusual in it that no one else is looking for. So there's a chance that just by going to a new area, you might find something odd. And you can also set up bird feeders. Easiest way to start looking and understanding birds, set up feeders. They're much closer. You don't have to go to them. They come to you. You can start understanding different behaviors, how they look, different plumages that they have during the different seasons. You get more accustomed to our birds. So just from driving around and checking out those rare bird alerts, I found several species. One of the first ones I did was snow goose. This was in a community in Seminole County. And I saw the hotspot there, the pin that people were putting on it. And I drove over to it. It was about 20 minutes from where I was living at the time, and pulled in and parked. And I was in the middle of the pond, exactly how the person said it would be. And a couple of weeks later, it was gone. So it moved on and just was doing the same thing that piratic had, where it got blown in from a storm. Whooping cranes. It's been a little while since I've seen a whooping crane, so I just went on eBird, searched through their explore function, searched for whooping cranes, went to the map, set it for the month and year that I was in, and saw that there was one in Leesburg, a little bit of a drive from where I lived, that was being spotted in a residential area. drove there, I was looking around, and then I just was walking along the side of the road right next to my truck. So sometimes you get super lucky like that, but that's the reason you should be checking out eBird for these things. Sometimes you can get something very simple like that. For me, for birders, there's things called nemesises. So your nemesis bird is something that you've gone out multiple times trying to find and you've struck out every time. So for me, it was scissor-tail flycatcher for Florida. And it is a beautiful bird, super cool. It's got a really nice long tail. This is not a very good photo of one, but it's my first photo. And every time I've been sighted before over by Lake Apopka, I get there, and the morning that I got there, just before I got there, was the last time it was sighted for the rest of the year. So I struck out for 4 years on them, and I got reported again, went out there. It's an area within 1 square mile, so it's definitely the same bird that's coming every year. And saw a guy with binoculars, so obviously a birder. Walked over to him, asked him if he saw it. He was the original person that had listed it. He said that it came in with Western kingbirds. And so when the Western kingbirds come, then it should come about 5 minutes after that. Western kingbirds come. 5.5 minutes later, the scissor-tail comes. That last 30 seconds was a long time. And the last one we've got is a broad-billed hummingbird. This is an Arizona species. Beautiful hummingbird. Very rare for Florida. But it happened to come to some guy's feeder in his backyard in Alachua County. So don't know how it came here. Most likely a storm, but again, we'll never know. He noticed that it was unusual. It didn't match some of the other hummingbirds he was seeing. Contacted someone who knew that was into birds. They saw it. He knew what it was. Freaked out. Listed it on eBird, and just about everyone in Alachua and Marion County went to go and find it. So it's a very good bird, very, very nice species. And to see a male in full plumage like this is pretty unusual. This was in December. So nice bird. I got very lucky. So the behavior that was being listed was, oh, and the other thing is we got to just check out this guy's backyard, and he was totally fine with it. Kind of weird, but nice of him. So it would go from his feeder that he had behind his house, go from a tree, drop down, go to the feeder, jump back up to the tree every 20 minutes or so. So just go in this continuous cycle. For whatever reason, it dropped down, got some food, and then landed in a bush right next to me. And then I was able to get this photo. So very lucky. Sometimes you get very lucky with stuff like that. I would have been happy with just that spot in the photo and bad light and kind of like the scissor tail, but sometimes you get very lucky. But with that, I want to thank you for your attention. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'm gonna just, thank you, Max. I'm gonna say thank you, and I'm just gonna stop the recording, so you know, everybody has to